Good morning, YouTube. How are you? Let me just turn the volume on here down. How are you, everybody? Hope everyone is having a relaxed day, a relaxed morning, starting your day off right, putting good practices into play in your life. I know I am constantly looking to do better and make improvements. I'm going to start into what I'm going to read, but before I do, I just want to say please do not be afraid to pivot on behaviors, on actions, on things that you used to do that do not serve you. Don't be worried about what people are going to say. Don't be worried about how people are going to take things. Move forward from whatever place that you're in. You know, sometimes that's the thing that I know holds me back, and I'm sure it holds other people back as well, is where you're thinking, you know, how would I put it? You're thinking, you know, I've behaved this way, or I've done this thing for so long. Sorry, it's a little bit loud, it's distracting. Give me a second. You're thinking, I've done this for so long, I've behaved this way for so long, I've practiced this for so long, and if I change now, people are gonna say, like, who do you think you are, or blah blah blah. And you know, that's why sometimes it's easier to change by moving away from other people that used to be in your old world, and people that used to be used to accessing you a certain way, whether that be friends, whether that be people who don't even like you, whether that be people who are observing you. You know, for me, it was in business. I used to run my business a certain way, even though I myself was a different person. So you just have to be okay with, and sometimes it almost feels like forgiving yourself. You have to be okay with moving on in whatever way it's possible for you to move on, without beating down on yourself and without thinking to yourself, like, you know, I have to be this or that. So you have to give yourself permission to walk away. Like for me, I give myself permission to just walk away from things that just are not working for me, to walk away from behaviors that are not working for me, people that are not working for me. And sometimes it's a little tougher than, you know, but you got to choose yourself, and you got to choose what's right for you beyond anything. So I'm going to start off with the verse that I want to read today, or the chapter that I want to read today. The chapter that I want to read today is Joshua 14. Joshua chapter 14 talks about the inheritance of Judah. And these are the countries which the children of Israel inherited in the land of Canaan, which Eleazar the priest and Joshua the son of Nun, and the heads of the fathers of the tribes of the children of Israel distributed for inheritance to them. By lot was their inheritance, what as the Lord commanded by the hand of Moses, for the 9 tribes and for the half tribe. For Moses had given the inheritance of 2 tribes and a half tribe on the other side of Jordan. But unto the Levites he gave none inheritance amongst them. For the children of Joseph were 2 tribes, Manasseh, I hope I'm saying that correct, Manasseh and Ephraim. Therefore he gave no part unto the Levites in the land, save cities to dwell in, but with their suburbs for their cattle and for their substance. As the Lord commanded Moses, so the children of Israel did, and they divided the land. Then the children of Judah came unto Joshua of Gilgal, and Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite said unto him, Thou knowest the thing that the Lord said unto Moses the man of God concerning me, and thee in Kadesh Barnea. 40 years old was I when Moses, the servant of the Lord, sent me from Kadesh Barnea to espy out the land. And I brought him word again that it was in mine heart. Nevertheless, my brethren that went up with me made the heart of the people melt, but I wholly followed the Lord my God. And Moses swore on that day, saying, Surely the land whereon thy feet have trodden shall be thine inheritance, and thy children's forever, because thou hast wholly followed the Lord my God. And now, behold, the Lord have kept me alive, as he said, these 45 years, ever since the Lord spake this word unto Moses, while the children of Israel wandered in the wilderness. And now, lo, I am this day 85 years old. As yet, I am as strong this day as I was in the day that Moses sent me, as my strength was taken. Even so is my strength now for war, both to go out and to come in. Now therefore give me this mountain whereof the Lord spake in that day, for thou heardest in that day how the Anakims were there, and that the cities were great and fenced. If so be the Lord, if so be the Lord will be with me, then I shall be able to drive them out, as the Lord said. And Joshua blessed him and gave unto Caleb the son of the name Jephunneh Hebron for an inheritance. Hebron therefore became the inheritance of Caleb the son of Jephunneh the Kenizzite unto this day, because that he wholly followed the Lord God of Israel. And the name of Hebron before was Kirjatharba, which Arba was the great man amongst the Anakims, and the land had rest from war. So essentially, it's, to me, Old English is so long-winded. I've mentioned that before. I don't know if anybody is really following along, but it just basically talks about the fact that after so much that they had been through, they had been in the wilderness, they had been fighting, they had been going through all kinds of things, and essentially they came to the point where God said, it's time to give them their inheritance. It's time to give them their land. It's time to give them their home, because they followed me wholeheartedly. And so sometimes, as it says here in the scripture, there are people that are inhabiting your inheritance, and you do need to drive that out. You need to reclaim that land for yourself, and God will be with you. And it ends in chapter 15, and the last line says, and the land had rest from war, because it is tiring. Fighting these battles, it is tiring. But if you hold on, if you endure, it doesn't happen in our time, it doesn't happen our way, but it does happen. As long as you're patient, you hang in there, and you hold on with God, eventually you do get to the point where it happens for you. So I want to talk about a few things. The theme of what I'm going to talk about today is new beginnings, and helping with that mindset of having a new beginning. I want to first start off with a few notes that I made. If you are at the point, or still at the point, especially you can be, and you can be at this point at any point in your journey. You would assume that you would only be at this point in the beginning of your journey, but growth is not linear, and going through things like this, sometimes your mentality will feel like it's regressed as you mature in the battle that is over your life. So you might get to a point with things where you might think, how did I find myself in this? How did I find myself going through this, etc., etc.? And I just want to let you know, first of all, you can be a highly intuitive person. You could be psychic. You could be very observant. You could be slow. You could be pensive, slow to act, I mean. And you could still find yourself blinded to the path you are about to embark on, because if you saw what the path was, you would run from it. If you saw that this would involve a fight, if you saw that this would involve the kind of fight that it's involving, if you saw that it was going to be as bad as it is, like everybody else, you would run. You would run. There are other people who have seen just how bad this thing is. They've been scared off and they've run away from this fight. Running away from this fight is running away from your destiny. It's running away from your inheritance. So you had to be blinded to this in order to get into it. It doesn't matter who warned you. It doesn't matter how many people came to you nicely to tell you, hey, you don't want to be a part of this. It doesn't matter how people tried to convince you. If you had to go through it, it was your destiny to go through. You have to go through it, and it is what it is. So you have to release that guilt. You have to release beating up on yourself. You have to release being upset at yourself for essentially not seeing. Because, you know, for some of us, this is a divine purpose on our life. And what I mean by a divine purpose on your life is, I mean that this is something that God wants. It means that you cannot not want it. It means that even if you don't want it, even if you're asking to be released, even if you try to run from it, even if you try to walk away, even if you try to concede and say, okay, I'm gonna walk away from this, this is too much for me, you're gonna end up back in the fight. You're gonna end up back in the fight, and you're gonna be mad at other people that find you back in this fight. You're gonna be mad because it's just like, this is God's will. This is how things happen. I have noticed times where I have gotten triggered and I have acted in a certain way. It's been to my highest good. There have also been times where I haven't acted. I have just let something go and said, like, I'm not dealing with it. It's to my highest good. It's almost like you're walking this path no matter what you do. They can already, your spirit guides already feel what's in your heart. They know what's in your heart. They understand what, you know, they know your triggers, they know your motivations, they know all of that. They're not just your guides for no reason to get you to where you have to go. They know how to get you where you have to go. So they know when you're going to be lazy, they know when you're going to act, they know how you behave. They're going to get you there no matter what happens. And so, you know, in a way, that's a good thing. And do release this. Sometimes we get mad at ourselves, we beat up on ourselves, why did I do this? Why did I do that? Why did I go that way? If I just avoided this, if I didn't meet this person, if this didn't happen, if I didn't respond to that person, all of this comes into play, and it doesn't matter. You're gonna walk that path regardless. This is the path you have to walk. This is the place that you're gonna go down, and it is what it is. So I just wanna at least put that out there, because I think I took the bulk of my journey and I didn't feel that, to be honest with you, only because of I I saw it coming, if you will, and it was already too late by the time. It's like, once the ball gets rolling, the ball gets rolling. I think the majority of us are already in a place where it doesn't matter. Once this starts, this thing that's in your life, destiny swaps or whatever, it doesn't matter when you see it. Once it starts, it starts. You're walking this path, and you're either going to decide to stick with it or not. But when it's a divine purpose, as in you have spirit guides who are here, who are like, this is what you came here for, this is how you have to do it, you're not getting out of it. It is what it is. Like, you're not, it is what it is. You're not getting out of it. And I could just say that. You are in a life of placement, and I always call it standing in place for God. So You are just here to be of service. You're just here to be the human vessel. That is an important role. That is a significant role. It's not a role that's better than anybody else's role or worse than anybody. Like, it's not in comparison to, it is just important. So at what point is God going to relinquish the vessel? At what point is spirit going to say, the plan that we put in motion, the vessels that we have, we're going to relinquish them? They're not going to do that. And because they're not going to do that, you're in place. So I just want to put that that way. The other thing is, sometimes you have a false start because it seems to you that it's a false start, but it's not. It's actually part of the journey. And I said that it's the required path because you're literally on this journey in order for you to see what you need to see to walk the real time. It's kind of like taking a mock trial. So you take a mock trial first, or you take a mock test, or you take a practice test, and that's the first thing that you do. And you kind of go through your practice test, and you just kind of see what the test is about, what kind of questions are on there. It may be timed, whatever challenges come with it, so you get an example of how to go through it. And maybe you're gonna have to repeat this practice test until you pass it, and then you get to go sit the actual exam. You had to see everything that you needed to see on this path in order to walk this. Otherwise, you are guaranteed gonna fail because it's built to fail. It's built to steal what, not just stealing from you, stealing from God, essentially. This is the part I think sometimes like is not acknowledged. Stealing from you is stealing from God because you are a vessel for God. And so anything that God puts in your hand is of service to God. Yes, you enjoy it as well, but it's of service to God. It's what God wants to be done here on earth. And so God puts that in the hands of those that God can trust to do things like that. So usually these are people that have a character where they cannot be bought. You can't bribe them. You can't convince them. You can't easily trick them. They know what's going on. They have the discipline and the patience to stand in place. These are the qualities that God needs before they even start working on you, working on your case, working on your situations. You need people who can already withstand a significant amount of pressure and who are not going to fold. You need people who are going to endure to a certain point until God says, okay, now we can move forward. You don't know when that is. You don't know how long it takes. You don't know. But at a point, and I can say this for myself, you realize that you're on a curriculum. And this curriculum is not led by you. This curriculum is lesson after lesson after lesson after lesson that you need to go through. And you get to a point, you're like, oh my goodness, how many more lessons? As many as it takes for you to understand the full problem that you're dealing with. Because unless you can deal with all the behaviors, all the challenges, all the obstacles, all the blockages, until you've seen everything, until you've seen not just the main tricks, but the tricks they rework, and the tricks that they innovate, and the ones that they build upon, and the new ones, unless you can defeat this thing completely and jump over every hurdle and learn what you need to learn, then you cannot graduate because you are not ready and equipped to handle what it is that you need to handle. And that is a good thing. It may feel like you're stagnated, but that is a good thing. What? So, how do we start with a new beginning? A new beginning is essentially the ability to rebirth yourself. So if you think of yourself as this one vessel, this one person, this one human being, and then you get to a point where you've been trapped, you've been blocked, you've been put in a position where you cannot move. Now, for the majority of us, that is with a destiny swap, that is with a soul binding, that is with a spiritual, that is with a bunch of witches coming together, or whatever it is that happens to you. You get stagnated, you get stuck in place, and you get blocked where you are. In this place that you're in, where you're stuck, and literally some things, these people understand spiritual law, so that they understand that if they bind you and they bind your soul, you cannot move. And essentially what needs to happen is, in order to move out of where you are, you need to rebirth yourself. There needs to be a rebirth. You need to give birth to a new version of yourself. And then it almost looks like a new you, a new version of you almost like breaks out the back of the old you with wings and flies off. And you can move from this place that you were in, or it's like a caterpillar in a cocoon. And when you break out, you're a butterfly. You're not the old person. You're an evolved version of yourself with the ability to fly. You're an even better version of yourself, and you can move on. And that version of yourself is not stuck crawling on the ground. That version of yourself can fly off. So, in a sense, that is spiritual immortality. Spiritual immortality is the ability for one to rebirth themselves. Spiritual immortality is the ability to never be stuck in any one place. A rebirth, and I've gone through a rebirth is abandoning the old. So abandoning the old self that no longer serves your new self now. So that takes, and I had to put the notes over here, that takes a commitment to the new. And that is a process that comes in phases. It may look different for everybody, but it comes in phases, and it requires everything new. New actions, new practices, new mindsets, new reactions, and sometimes a new reaction is no reaction, as it were. And this is not first of all, rebirthing yourself is as difficult as it is, because first you need to go through the death process. The death process is very difficult. The death process is where everything that had been established in your life, all those strongholds that were in your life, it gets pulled down. So old friendships, old relationships, old networks, old ways of doing things, whatever you had that was built while it was not of service to God, whatever that you got involved in. That's why a lot of times when things are happening for you, these dark forces, they come and they put their hands in it. They want their people to purchase it. They want their people to be the ones promoting your stuff. They want their hand in it some way, so that it is of service to dark forces as well. So it is very important when you're building the new that you build it God's way, that you build it in the way not just that God wants it to build, but with God and with people. If you are going to collaborate with people that God puts in place for you. And a lot of the times, God doesn't want you to collaborate with anyone. Your collaboration is with God. That is the collaboration. There is nothing else. Now, as hard as the death process is, because sitting there and watching your life completely fall apart is nowhere near easy. Sitting there and watching everything that you put effort and money and everything into fall apart is nothing easy. Let me again say, watching your life fall apart in front of you is not easy. And you have to have the willpower, and you have to have the strength to commit to that journey and watch yourself go through it. If you quit too early, if you quit at the death portion of it, and this is where the enemy comes in and tries to convince you that God has abandoned you. This is where the enemy comes in and tries to convince you that you are by yourself. God has abandoned you. Come on our side. We can help you. We can put it together. That is what secret societies do. They put you through a death process, whether you know it or not. They put a death to everything that you had before them, everything that you built before them. They need to deplete it by a certain time prior to when God comes in. And they need to also make you give up on God, give up on yourself, give up on your journey, so that they can institute the new. They want to give you the new beginning. So they're going to give you the new business, the new business name, the new title, the new whatever. But it's like they give you the death and then they want to give you the rebirth. But what happens if you stick with your situation is that they can give you the death and God will give you the rebirth. So God will utilize them to put a death to everything that they can touch, because they cannot touch everything. And then God puts in the rebirth for you. And then you get to walk that path. You get to walk through those doors that are actually meant for you, that are meant for your highest good. Because if they give you the rebirth, they will give you a slither of what is supposed to be for you while they eat off of everything that is yours, while they take from you. And they could do this in so many different ways that I'm not going to get into for the purpose of this video. But this is the process that you got to go through. You got to go through your death process. And when your death process is done, now you got to go through your rebirth process. And rebirth is not easy. So, new action. So before I go into that, let me say, you can be of service. You can be a part of that kingdom, that family, that organization, that society without knowing, without taking the pledge, without necessarily wearing the robe where you could be 1 foot in and 1 foot out. They do want you both feet in, but sometimes you're of service in what you're doing, in your actions, in what you align yourself to. So for example, and I see it now, and sometimes you have the ability to see things more clearly from the outside than you did from the inside. So I'm going to give 2 examples. The first is that there are people who I have seen online that every time they talk about the Bible, first of all, their followers, their subscribers went from 2,000 to like 12,000 overnight. And everything that they post in regards to God, they only get like 200, 300 views. Everything that they post in regards to other things gets 2,000, 3,000 views, if you see that disparity. So a person who's not doing this of service to God, who's doing this for, let's say, ego, or who's just trying to make a bit of money, a person who that is their motivation, is going to respond to the stimulus. So if you're being stimulated, if you come here and you're being stimulated by the ego, by wanting to have a platform with a lot of followers, by wanting to make money, by wanting to monetize a platform, by wanting to have the most likes and whatever, all of these things that are not motivated and not properly in service, it leads you down the wrong path. So it's kind of like you will be motivated for behavior that is low vibrational. But behavior that is of service to God, it looks like it's being penalized. So if you now say, well, every time I do a Bible verse, I know it's not going to get as much engagement, then you're not going to do that. Think about it like being an artist, a music artist. If you're going to sing about things that are going to raise people's vibrations and things that are going to help people, you're not going to get played on the radio. You're not going to get any awards. You're not going to get any of that. It's going to beat down on you. But when you know what you're doing it for, it doesn't matter if you get awards. It doesn't matter what anyone says. It only matters that you're out there and you're serving your purpose and you're doing what it is that you're supposed to. And if God wants it to flourish, if God wants it to work, it will work. Let me tell you, one of my most lackluster videos is the one with the most views. The most like I came on and I got the message. And I delivered the message from a place kind of doubt. It's not that I didn't want to deliver the message. I always want to deliver my messages, but the way I was delivering the message was essentially like, I know nobody's gonna do this. I know that, like it was almost like it's gonna fall on deaf ears. And I also gave the message like, this message is gonna be attacked, because that was a message about taking the altars down. And I'm like, look, if people are facing karma, if bad things are happening in people's lives and they're still doing it, and I myself have been shocked by this, why would I tell someone to take down an altar and they would actually do it? So I gave the message because I have to give the message, and that is the message that came to me. And I'm far beyond doubting the messages that I get. Because sometimes I get messages. In the beginning, I used to get messages, and I'm like, did I imagine this? But then I was like, where would that come from? That's so far from anything I would ever think. That is not from me, guaranteed. But like, I delivered it anyway. And then later on, I started realizing, oh my God, okay, that was true. There were things say I wouldn't say out loud, but I knew in my heart. And then I read it later on, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm going so off topic, but one of those things was when I used to pray, and I prayed to Father God, and it was just like literally how children draw pictures of the sun and they put a face on the sun. That's all I drew as a child. All these sun pictures with faces on the sun. And I thought, how am I as an adult praying and this is what I see, but I didn't fight it. It was like a face of a sun. It had arms, it didn't have legs, and it was like this face of a sun speaking to me. But I wouldn't want to say that out loud because I'm like, I didn't want to be judged. I didn't want people to like, and I didn't know anything about Egyptian mythology at all. I didn't understand. And then when I read it, I was like, what am I reading? And I was like, oh my God. It was like everything that I have already experienced, I experienced first, acknowledged first, was scared to say, and then got validated by whether it's information online, whether it's other people that I've heard, whether it's religious or spiritual beliefs, practices. It's like everything got validated outside of me. So now I knew this was gonna happen. I lost my train of thought. So yeah, I was giving the message about taking down the altar, and the engagement on this page is so bad. And I remember there was a day where the engagement got so horrible. Like they were literally taking people out of my lives every day. And I was like, well, it is what it is. And I went to bed that night and I was like, how am I gonna go through this? Am I gonna keep going live? Am I gonna just post videos? Like, what's gonna happen? Because every time I go live, I get spiritually attacked. All of these things happen. I mean, people are astral projecting into my space. Like, I've been through it all with coming on here to give messages. Feelings of anger being projected, like all kinds of things have happened as I've remained committed to just giving the messages. And then I got to the point where I went to bed that night after like I did a whole live, and it was so horrible. It was like the worst engagement ever. And I woke up the next day and I was like, you know what? I'm gonna be talking to myself on live for a couple of months if that's what it takes, because that's what, to me, I need to give the messages. And nobody ever told me there was no other caveats with the message. It wasn't like, give the messages if the engagement's high, give the messages if people will listen, give the messages if people will take them. It was just give the messages. It was nothing else. So I was like, well, it is what it is. I'm gonna have to give the messages either way. And I remember I woke up in a good mood because I was like, I'm gonna give the messages either way. And I remember that day talking about like getting back in the saddle. I talked about the fact that, you gotta keep going, regardless of what the circumstances seem like, and, that you do feel dejected and you feel defeated, but this is what it is, this is what your path is. So I gave that message about taking down the altars. And I came back and I can't remember if it was a couple hours later or the next day. That thing had 1,000 views on it. And I was like, listen. And to me, I just felt like God was saying, you do your part, let me do my part. You do your part, let me do my part. You give the messages, I will figure out if, when, and how these messages are gonna get put out, and if people are gonna see it. And so I just got to the point, and there are other messages that just blew up as well, and I just got to the point where I was like, listen, it's almost like God is saying, damned if you do and damned if you don't. If nobody tampers with it, it'll grow. If people tamper with it, it'll blow up even faster. It doesn't matter. Just do your part. And this is also what I call co-creation. So I said all of that to say that I have seen people who, when they're doing things of service to God, those things are deliberately ignored and pushed aside. And then when they're doing things that are in service of something else, those are the things that they bless. When I started, or not bless, but that are promoted. When I started my business, people came in and called the clothes church clothes, but this is the type of clothes that I wear, and this is the kind of stuff that I wanted to put out, and this is the way that I wanted to build my brand. And because it wasn't being rewarded by being purchased, I went with the way of getting sexy. And it went sexier and sexier and sexier until it got to the point where I was like embarrassed of the business. I didn't want to tell people what I did. I wouldn't make business cards. I didn't want to put my name on it. I didn't want my kids to be a part of it. And by the time I got to the point where my business was in the public, where I had to be there, I just would refuse to sell that stuff. Like I just couldn't do it anymore. I was like, now that I physically have to be here all the time and I'm in a public space, I would just prefer, and then my children have to be in the business. I can't keep attracting this crowd. There were particular times where people would come in and I would be so embarrassed, and it would either be in front of a staff member or it would be in front of, my kids. And we would stand there stunned because it would be like a person that, I'm just saying, like, I can't do this anymore. And so I had to pivot. I had to change the items that I was selling. And in making those changes, they kept coming back and they kept trying to pull you back into the old world, demanding that sort of thing and bringing those sort of models that want to model for free. And aligning, it's like anytime you can collaborate with someone, it's someone that is in that world, because they want to take your product, market it in that space to those people, and then you get those customers and those businesses, and then you are a part of a network here, and you don't even know that you're a part of the network, but you're in service to the network in some way. You may think that what you have is independent. Your heart may be different. And it's almost like being in a surrogate family, because I get up and I pray every day and I meditate every day as the owner of the business. I haven't taken a pledge. My life doesn't belong to this, but what I'm doing is of service to something else. And until I get the strength and the courage to say that me selling a different product and marketing to different people is going to be hard, I'm going to have to change. I'm essentially going to have no customers. It's going to be like a brand new business. I'm going to need to revamp absolutely everything, make everything brand new, and do this God's way. Do this the way that it had been put on my heart is originally. Unless I do that, unless I get rid of what never served me and what never served God, unless I do all of that, then I'm going to always remain, no matter, I'm not going to be able to move forward, because it's like having one foot in the past and one foot in the future. How can I fully evolve? How can I fully move on? How can I fully meet the people that I'm supposed to meet and reach the people that I'm supposed to reach if I'm representing something that even I myself am embarrassed of? I wouldn't dress like this. I wouldn't let my children dress like this. This dressing this way is a lifestyle. It's representative of a lifestyle that I don't live. I don't go out to these places. This is not something that I enjoy. I don't even like being around it. So it's like my spirit's rejecting it, but I'm forcing it. And because you're doing that, it's like you're unhappy with the business in general. You're disinterested in it. It just becomes a way of making money, but then your heart feels like it's other places. And if you do something that is aligned with your personal values, what, not just what you value yourself, but what makes sense for God, if you can find a way to marry the two of those, you can never not be, it's a passion. You can never not be happy with what you're doing, because everything you do is in some way in service to God. And so for me, it started where just in my marketing, having images, or having the image of my mother, my spirit guide in that marketing, is not just to me a constant reminder of the fact that we are co-creating this life together, and that we are one, and that having her on there is not just saying I am of service to you, but that I am you and you are me, And I would like to embody you so much that I embody your qualities, that I become indistinguishable from you, so that when people see me, they see you. And that's the way I feel like you fully integrate your path, your purpose, your spirit guide, everything with how you're moving forward. So to put it another way, I know that a lot of my behavior, a lot of the way that I've been approaching the world has been a reaction or a response to the stimulus in the environment. Again, being attacked, being provoked, being pushed, being projected anger. And I want to put a pin in it and say, when you're first experiencing this stuff, you cannot beat yourself down for how you react, because it's normal. And especially when you're taking your mock trials and your mock tests, this is where you're tested and this is where you learn. So please forgive yourself for how you react. You're going to say things and do things that are not representative of God and of at least your gods. And you might think, well, why is my platform not blowing up? Why is my business not blowing up? Why is this not happening? Because you're not ready yet. You don't know how to, you're not fully in your new self yet. You're in the birthing process still. If you have never experienced giving birth, it is a necessary evil to get the most, it's very, a child is very highly anticipated. It's something you hope for. It's something, you pray over, you protect, blah, blah, blah. And you got to go through that birthing process. And my goodness, it's insane. It is insane. I have given birth twice with literally no pain medication. I don't know what the hell provoked me. I don't know why I would do it not once but twice. I don't know what provoked me. It is absolutely, you feel every ounce of everything. It's crazy. And after you go through the actual labor pains, how many hours of the most intense, excruciating pain ever, then you gotta push. You gotta feel every ounce of pushing. It is insane. But when it's done, like the minute it's done, the second it's done, you forget all about that, because they put a baby in your arms right away. And you literally, if you did not get a baby right away, you would bitch and complain, excuse my language, forever about that pain. You forget about it instantly. You don't even go, well, maybe some people, they go home and they talk about it or whatever, but it's like there's a new energy, there's a new excitement, and it depends on, your culture. Like in our culture, when somebody's pregnant about to give birth, they change everything. They change the curtains, they change the bed sheets, it depends on the family, how much money you have. They change the furniture. People come over, they cook for you, people who are closest to you. It's very important who baths the baby the first time. And like, some people do not want their baby to leave their side. Like, some people must baptize the baby immediately, name the baby immediately. Like, there's all of these traditions when new life comes into the world. But all of these traditions lend to a newness. It's a feeling of newness. It's not like you're giving birth and bringing a baby into the same dirty environment that it was before. It's a newness. Some people go as far as to inside and outside of their house, plant gardens before go out of their way for everything to feel new. Even if it's not a new house, they make it feel like a new house. People have, in over here where we don't see it as a tradition, people put the baby room together, new furniture, all of this, but it's to have that feeling of newness. This is exactly what it feels like when your life totally transforms. You do not recognize your life. You may not be living in the same place. You may not. It's not even just that you don't want to talk to the same people. You don't resonate with them. I went through a phase in my life. I've been going through this death and rebirth phases my entire life. When I was maybe like, I want to say early 20s, 23, like, was it 23? At least 23. I just went through a phase where I could not club anymore. Like, it didn't matter how hard I tried. I couldn't do it. I would try, I would push myself, and I would go there and I would just stand and I would look around at people. And I remember someone said to me, like, you know, it was an ex at the time that was just like, listen, stop going. I'm so annoyed. They're like, I drive you there and an hour later, I barely get to sit down. You're calling me to come back and pick you up. You say, let me drive you because just in case I drink, I don't want to drive. And you come back and you're sober and you didn't drink and you look like you didn't have fun. Stop going. And I just stopped going because I was like, I remember there was one more time for the promotion of my business. I was supposed to go. I just kept saying, don't go, don't go, don't go, don't go. And it was bad because I made all these preparations with the promoter, with the DJ, with all of this. I was supposed to do a giveaway. I didn't do any of it. Like, money was involved. I just couldn't go. I couldn't pick myself. There was time after time I could not pick myself up off of the bed to go. It's like, I know I have things to do. And usually when things are business related, you're able to like push yourself like to go. Money's involved and I can't go. And there was even a time I was supposed to go partying and I couldn't go, and and they kept calling me and they're like, come, it's good, it's a good party, whatever. Somebody got shot and crippled. I couldn't go. And I remember my friend at the time called me a witch because I was like, I hope it gets shot up, because I was mad. I wanted to go, my body wouldn't let me go. And it just comes to a point where you just can no longer relate to anything of the past. People think it's voluntary. It's not voluntary. You're not meaning to make these changes. It doesn't do anything for you. You just don't care. And to be that young and not be relatable to people, you get weird. It's like you don't want to go, so you don't dress the same. If you had to go somewhere that you wanted to, like if I had to go somewhere I wanted to go, I would look amazing. I know how to dress. I have clothes. I sell clothes for a living. I can style things. I can put things together. I can do all of that. If I don't want to go somewhere, I don't feel like going. If I don't want to be around a certain crowd, I get irritated walking up to the door. I just don't want to be there. My whole vibe changes, my spirit changes. I don't want to be there. And it's like my spirit will just push me to go somewhere else. I don't want to be around that crowd. If I try to talk to them, there's so many times that these people have tried to become friends with me, and they probably have a million stories about why I'm so weird. Why is this person so weird? Why did she dress like this? Why did she behave like this? Why did she act like it? And then it turns them off and they don't want to try again because we don't click, we don't align. I don't act like that. I don't dress like that. I don't do my hair like that. I'm gonna come out and not want to take pictures, not want to be on the video. My hair is not, like everything is not gonna align. And that's because it's not your people. If you did resonate with them before, you're going to be the weird person now. It's not going to work. There's nothing that you can try to do. Like if I tried to sell in the way that I did before, I wouldn't be able to take the first step. Not because God is blocking me, but because my whole spirit it's like it shuts down. Not interested. You try to talk to the same people, everything shuts down. Cannot go past, the conversation doesn't want to. And then it just gets to that point where that cycle is closing, everything shuts down slowly but surely. You cannot move forward even if you wanted to, even if you forced it. So I have had behaviors where these behaviors have not been in alignment because I've been responding to everything around me. I've been responding to the spell work. I've been responding to the anger that's being sent my way. I'm responding to all of these things. And then I've had the feelings of shame, like, I know I'm misrepresenting God because this is not the God that I experience. But I feel like I'm constantly defending myself. I have to fight. I have to take care of myself. I have to be very tough through this because otherwise you don't want to get into crying. You don't want to get into too much breaking down. You don't want to go that way either. And it's been learning the middle path of not being too much on either side. Definitely not being weak and not crying, but not having to fight in such an aggressive way or such a way where you're gonna lose yourself or you're gonna misrepresent yourself. So it's been a period as well of me learning. And then I had that period of shame where I'm like, this has been a failure. Like I've been failing myself. This hasn't been what I wanted to do. But I am now at the point, what I can say through this experience is I'm at the point where some of the most difficult things that a person can experience, I can tell people how to work through it. So I also want to say this journey is not about perfection, and I have tried to be a perfectionist my entire life. I'm a Virgo. Virgo is a perfectionist. That is one of the first things that people will say about people who are born in my zodiac sign or sun sign. I want everything to be clean. I take my time, I do things well. Honestly, even my house, like if people come to my house in past, like everything is pristine all the time. Like you cannot ever pop up on me and it's dirty. There's never a time. It's like always. But it's like on this journey, you gotta let go of it. It's not gonna happen. You gotta forgive yourself for every single mistake that you've made. And forgiving yourself is so important because God's already forgiven you and you're still beating up on yourself. So God's already ready to move on and you're holding yourself back. You're holding on to it. I've had to learn how to let things go with myself. It's not anybody else that's beating up on me. It's me holding myself back saying, I shouldn't have done this. I shouldn't have done that. And it's like when I look at the situation, I didn't know. I didn't know better. I didn't have enough information. Whatever the case was, I had to learn. And a lot of times learning is through experience. So someone can tell you why not to do something. You're going to repeat it when the test comes in a different format. If, let's say, for example, the test is know when to say things and know when not to. If you just listen to know when to say and know when not to say, somebody might not come with provoking you or with inquiring for information. Something else might happen. You might just sit there and think, well, it's okay because this bit of information is innocent and nothing's going to happen from that. But you didn't learn. Learning is giving the information, God letting you give the information, letting it successfully getting out, and seeing the cause, the damage as a result of saying something that you shouldn't have said, reacting in a way that you shouldn't have reacted. And now that you know the consequences, now that you felt the pain, now that you felt the loss, you're not repeating that mistake anymore because you understand just what is at stake. So I remember I had a job where they said to us, you want to learn on your small clients. You do not want to learn on the big clients where it's going to hurt. It's going to be a gut punch. You want to learn where you lose something, offend someone, say the wrong thing, make a mistake in, a contract when it's small. You don't want to learn when it's big. It's a lot of money involved. It could be a lawsuit, and it's the same thing. It's almost like God puts you in a situation where you learn when it's small. You learn when it's salvageable. You learn when you're in that process of it dying anyway. And now you can move forward and know how to behave. And it's a humbling experience because you realize that you're not perfect. You can't be perfect because there are always things you're not going to know. There are always things that you don't understand, that you have to depend on guidance. You have to depend on energy outside of you. That you, no matter what human beings think, we are of service to something. There is no such thing as being your own God. Because as you walk this path yourself, you realize that there are energies out there that are stronger than you in both realms. On the physical plane, as a human being, there are energies, networks, organizations that are bigger than you, no matter how big your organization is. And in the spirit, there's always something stronger. There's always something you don't know about. There's always something with more tricks. So you have to constantly put yourself in a position where you are following the guides that are meant to be there to help you on your journey. And your journey, what's good for you is good for them, and what's good for them is good for you. Because you're always of service to something. Today in my comment section, I posted something that basically said that Satanism is essentially modern day Satanism. And I've heard this in a video that came on in my timeline where it said that you want to be your own God, follow your own paths and desires instead of giving into religious doctrine and all of that stuff and discipline. Because walking a spiritual path is a path that is very regimented and it's very disciplined. In order to keep connection with not just your spirit guides, but your spiritual self, your spiritual body, it takes discipline. It's not a free-for-all. What does that mean? You have to put in practices in place that serve the direction that you're going into. If you want to be in shape, you have to keep working out. Then you realize you have to eat better. Then you realize the times that you need to eat. You have to keep doing things that are going to keep aligned on the journey that you're going on. You cannot decide that you're going to be in shape and you're eating junk food and I mean, it's one thing if you do one thing here. It's just like you do one thing here and one thing there, it's not going to take you off. You know, but when you start doing it once a week, twice a week, now it becomes a habit. It's the habit that changes things. So what you habitually practice takes you where you need to go, and that's in both directions. So when you start saying, I'm going to be of service to myself, that is the illusion. Being of service to yourself, you're like, what are my own desires? Is it really your own desire to sleep around like that, or is that an addiction? Is it really your own desire to eat these kinds of foods that you know are not healthy for you, or is that an addiction? And as you go serving that addiction, because that's what it is, you're servicing that, now you find yourself being of service of something that tricked you to even thinking that way in the first place. Now you find yourself in service of something darker. Now you find yourself in service really and trapped and bound by something darker. So now what you were trying to run from, which was being in service, you still are in service, but what you're in service of, its best interest is not your best interest. It serves itself exclusively. It doesn't give back to you. It doesn't help you. It depletes you. It destroys you. So you find yourself having behaviors like sleeping around, and then you have the results of it that really start making your life very difficult in whatever way that manifests. Then you are eating foods that are not healthy for you, and then that manifests poorly with poor weight, and you don't feel great about yourself, and people making fun of you, and now your health is no good, and now you need to address all of those things because you're not eating right, you're not taking care of yourself, it's not in service of you. And every single example that there is of things that are not in service of you, continuing to do things that God is not asking you to do the opposite to punish you. I have to do this, I have to do that. That's how you may feel in the beginning. Because in the beginning of working out, it is so hard to change that behavior. It is so difficult. You're not in the habit of it yet. Once you get into the habit of working out, it's addictive. You want to work out all the time. You have to keep going. You start seeing the results. You feel amazing. It's the habit, the practice of it that makes it feel good. That's where the blessing is, in the practice of it. And once you're in the practice of it, even if you started eating poorly, it doesn't show right away. I know for myself, it takes a couple of months before it breaks. Or it may even take up to a year before it breaks, because you've been in the habit of it. It's the same with a spiritual practice. In the beginning, you get so much pushback and fight down and everything, and then eventually it gets to the point where you need this every day. You start thinking, well, I'm gonna pray in the morning when I wake up and at night when I go to sleep. And then you get to prayer and you're like, this is not enough. Twice a day is not enough. I gotta pray other times in the day. And if you don't have those other periods of prayer, you feel like you haven't prayed in forever. But when you step back, you're like, wait, but I did pray twice, but it's not enough. It's not enough, because what you get from the prayer, you want to stay in prayer. And the more you stay in prayer, the happier you feel, the better things go in your life. And the better things go in your life does not mean things don't fall apart. You got to think about, the best example that I can give is like being in love. When you're in love, and I mean like the beginning, the honeymoon phase of being in love, things are going wrong the same way they've always gone wrong. It just doesn't touch you. It doesn't affect you. You don't feel it. Your mind and your eyes see that something hasn't gone your way. And before it even has a chance for it to sink in, the fact that you're in love sweeps you right back, because you're in a heightened state of feeling and you're back there. And this thing, it's like, listen, when it's time for it to be fixed, it gets fixed. You're not rushing it, you're not forcing it, you're like, how can I do it? You're still working on it, but if it takes a week or a month, you don't feel a sense of relief from this being fixed because it never burdened you to begin with. So everything that goes wrong, it just went wrong. And you're even finding that it even worked out in a way for you because you're getting some type of blessing from that thing that went wrong. It's like that being in the spirit and being in love with God, where it's like something happens and normal you would be like, oh my God, here we go. Here we go again. But when you're with spirit, constantly praying, always in the spirit, in love with spirit, it's a different reaction now. So now, instead of saying, why did this happen to me? There's always something on my to-do list, blah, 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 blah. Now you get to the point where it's like, this thing that went wrong is a catalyst for a bigger change. It is a catalyst for something even better to come in. The example that I came with yesterday was, it's like getting an eviction notice from a landlord you're constantly fighting with. They don't want to do the things that they're supposed to do. And every day is a battle to get something done. And now you're thinking it's always something. And finally they decide like they don't want you there. They give you an eviction letter and you're like, oh my God, here we go again. And you're mad. You could do one of two things. You can go to court and fight that eviction so that you can stay. Or you can say, I'm going to surrender to this because this never felt good to begin with. And you can just let it go. And literally by them giving you that eviction letter or that eviction notice, now you're at the point where you're looking for better places to go, better places to live. So you know what? Maybe that place you lived, even if you liked it, it was far from work. You didn't like the fact that your neighbors had a dog that would poo in your backyard or this, that, and the third, whatever it was, whatever those problems were. You take the lessons that you learned from the discomfort of those problems to find a new solution. So the new place you go, oh, I went to look for somewhere and this person has 3 dogs. Definitely not gonna, it's the cheapest place. It's a nice location. They have 3 dogs. Can't deal with it. Don't want to fight with neighbors anymore. This one is great, but the price is no good. I don't like it. This place is too far. This place, instantly I met that landlord. I felt something, that told me, no, this is not the right person. When you finally find your place, you're going from, why is it taking longer this time? You're asking, like, how comes it's taking so long? Because you have better information now. You really know how to pick. So it's a longer process because you're pickier. You're pickier, you're refusing more. So now you're at a point where you're literally, going from place to place to place, and it may take you, before you could find a place in 3 weeks, and now it's taking you maybe 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 3 months, because you know what you don't want. And because you know what you don't want, by the time you settle with a new place, you're 6 months in your backyard, enjoying a drink in the sun, and you're like breathing a sigh of relief, like, oh my God, I really had to go through all that crap to be able to not just enjoy the peace here, but to know how to find my peace, to know what works for me. Some of us may have had horrible relationships in the beginning of our life, and that was not necessarily to make you never want to have another relationship or never be able to open up again, but really make you appreciate when you found something good, to know when you found something good, because you know every single box that this does not check. Like, these are my horrible boxes that I don't want to experience, but these are also, because I know about these horrible boxes, I want the opposite of that. And so these are my good boxes, and I know what I want to check off as well. And sometimes that's just how life works. This is a difficult path. That death and rebirth path puts you in a place where it says, this is why. It doesn't just say, I don't want to do this. It's saying, this is why I can't do this. This is why I can't be promiscuous. This is why I can't let not just the act of physically having sex, but the act of thinking about it and having these thoughts and falling into lust in any kind of way, because lust has more than one manifestation. It's not just the physical act. It could be self-pleasuring, and it could also be your mind. It could be other lusting with your mind. And the reason that you don't want to do this is not because God does not like sex, or God is like, no, God makes sex. That's how you have children. That's how you procreate. That's a part of enjoying life. But the reason you don't want to do it this way is because it is dangerous. Without you pledging to it, without you knowing, you're gonna now in your actions be of service to something else and be controlled by something else, and you don't even know, and you think it's okay, and you think it's innocent. This is the reason why we do things like we study the word of God, and we're around certain people, and we want to listen to certain messages and not other messages. And it might be good to have knowledge of things, very good to have knowledge of things, because you cannot fight things that you cannot understand. You cannot pull yourself away from it. You can't dig your head in the sand. But at the same time, having enough information to now know why I shouldn't do this, why I shouldn't do that, why I shouldn't be around certain people. We talk about things like self-respect, and yes, it's part of it is self-respect. But now you've noticed that being around certain people and excusing their behavior and saying, well, maybe they're like that with themselves or other people, but I don't want them to be like that with me, doesn't matter. You've now allowed yourself to be surrounded by certain people without your knowledge or intention, that are working against you without you knowing. It really always comes back to boiling down to understanding why. This process, after you understand why you shouldn't do things, you got to put it in practice. You got to have new rituals. You got to continue to analyze yourself, self-assess, and look at places where you are not in service of yourself, behaviors that are not in service of you. Put an end to those behaviors, and not just putting an end to it, but instituting new rituals and new practices and new actions that assist you on your journey of going in the direction that you want to go to. So it's not just saying, I'm not just eating, I'm no longer going to eat junk food. It's saying, not only am I no longer going to eat junk food, but I'm going to start eating healthier food intentionally. Oh, do I have a lighter? I'm going to start eating healthier foods intentionally. I'm going to start working out. I'm going to start eating at better times. Whatever it is. Sorry, I need to go get a lighter because I need to light a new one of these. Be back. Yes. Being of service to something that is not just outside of yourself, something that's inside of yourself, something that you welcome inside of yourself. So going through this process definitely takes having new practices. And I can tell you, for me, I realized that consuming the information that I consume also makes a big difference. And sometimes what happens is these things are natural. These things are coming to a natural end in your life, but because they're a habit, you continue doing it. So you might naturally want to put an end to certain things, and then old forces that already have some sort of hold in your life or some sort of position see themselves being expelled, and keep trying to hold on and keep trying to drag it on and keep trying to pull it forward. And you got to get to that point where you're letting it go. So as an example, I'm going to say things that I had to evolve out of to get rid of that stronghold. The first thing was reactions to being followed. That I had to put a death to, and let me also put a pin in this and continue to say, you cannot put a time frame on any of this. There is no right or wrong time. Nothing is late. You're gonna think, this took me months to learn. Just think about what you're talking about. How on earth is somebody supposed to learn this in a short space of time? These things are unnatural. These things are designed specifically to work based on human nature and human psychology. Please do not put pressure on yourself and tell yourself it took you long to learn. It took me a long time to be immune to being followed. It took a long time. It was a multifaceted process. Okay? This involved many pieces, many phases. First of all, spiritual cleansing. Cleansing the spell work off of you. Getting immune to the anxiety attack every time you see someone or notice someone following you. Understanding what's going on from multiple sides. This is spiritual. This is secret society. This is that. Understanding the whole picture. And it has different facets to it. It has different phases. Faces, F-A-C-E-S, faces, and everything is correct. In spirituality, everything contradicts itself and it's all correct. All of it is correct. That's the first thing you come to. And it comes from a place of understanding, to understand that everything is correct, even though it's like opposites. It's like one thing is many things. It's like aspects of us. There's aspects of an entity that are destructive, and that same thing is life. It is death and it is life. Everything is like, it's opposing. So I had to understand being followed from many different phases. I had to understand what it made you, what was the purpose of it psychologically. Because psychologically, somebody doesn't need to know when you're going to the grocery store, when you're going to the toilet, when this and when that. Maybe they might use it, that knowledge, to put together a schedule for you or whatever, but like, it's the psychology of being followed, the psychology of being monitored, the psychology of all of this that kind of does something to you. So you have the psychological component of it. You understand all of these things from different places. And then you got to put it into practice. You got to practice not being phased. You got to practice seeing the people following you as not just human beings, but human beings that are also part of a system. And not just human beings part of a system, but also people who are also themselves, not just in service, but victim too. And it takes literally coming to the point where you see the ultimate enemy here as a victim to something else, to realize that everything here is serving some sort of God. It's serving some sort of purpose. And if people look at you and look at what you do and realize that this is your job and this is something that you have to do, and you look at them and you see that this is their job and this is something that they have to do, or that they have submitted to, or that they are possibly struggling with, from that place of understanding, it is easier for you to say, I'm moving on, I'm walking away from it. So when I look at the people following me, I think to myself, do they have a choice necessarily? How does that go? And I don't know necessarily if they do or if they don't. For sure, I don't. But what I can say is, if you start looking at it from that standpoint of do they or do they not have a choice, you definitely get yourself to a point where you're just seeing people being weird. You may notice it, you may not notice it. You may care, you may not care. You know, you definitely get to the point of not caring at some point. And this is why one of the videos I made was not about waiting for things to end completely, but adapting to it. If you have to wait for there to be an end to things completely, you're never going to move on. You need to break out of the old self to get to the new self. It's not about staying in that condition. It's not about staying in that old way of thinking. It's about breaking out of it. So that old way of thinking still exists. There's still people that are going to be victim to it. It's you who are moving on. It's you who are pulling yourself away. So I found myself, you know, where I am now. I remember where it used to be brutal for me every day to be followed around. It was brutal to see cars come on the journey with me the entire time. And now I'm at the point where it just is what it is. It's not neither good nor bad. It just is what it is. There is not the same feeling. I don't have the same need to talk about it while I'm in the car and go on and on about it. It's like I see it, I may notice it, because that was the other thing. I couldn't help but notice it. I may notice it, but it doesn't have the same impact on me. That's the place you have to come to with literally everything, that place of no reaction. The place of no reaction, if it comes from, it does start from making up your mind to not have a reaction, but also eventually it comes a place of understanding, a place of acceptance, a place of trial and error, a place of reworking. You can't expect to have that no reaction one time and that being how it is. It has to be reworked. It has to be addressed from different angles, different attacks, different things that happen where you get to the point where you're like, listen, not only am I used to this, but it doesn't need my reaction to it because it's going to happen. And you do go from a place of like trying to avoid it, trying to do all of this extra stuff to like dodge it and whatever, and it's still happening, and it's just like it's on your path for a reason. One of the things that you have to come to terms with is that it just must play out in the way that it's playing out. It has to play out like that. There's nothing you can do. Spiritual attacks used to provoke the heck out of me. Everything used to provoke me, and it's that's by design. It's made like that so that it provokes you. And then I just got to a place where it's like, this is how it is. There is only so long that you can keep going with the same behavior and giving the same energy to it. At some point it becomes commonplace and there's nothing that you can do about it, and it is what it is, and you accept it as it is. There's nothing that is going to stop a person who is either determined or being pushed or who is possessed or who is being paid or whatever to stop a behavior. It is what it's going to be. For whatever the motivating factors are for it to be what it is, the factors are in place. So all you can do is adapt to it. When it's not going to stop, you adapt. So you have to adapt to all of the phases of what's happening here. And there's always going to be a reworking of things, and new things are going to be sent. And you just got to also be prepared for that. You got to stop giving up hope that there's not going to be new attacks that are going to come. There's always going to be innovation in the attacks that are being sent to you. But like I said, it's like a toolkit. You constantly collect them. And as you continue to collect new things, new attacks, new ways of people getting to you, you then get to the point where you can move forward. You get to the point where you can say, it is what it is. You know, I don't have to anticipate what it's gonna be. You know, I got to the point where I know that every week there's gonna be a new episode of attacks, and there's literally nothing I can do about it. But as they come, just manage them. One of the things that recently I had to see from dealing with my own projections of anger is, as I dealt with the projections of anger and I overcame that behavior, is seeing it in other people. And as I saw it manifest in other people, what it really allowed me to do was not judge them, not say, oh my God, get over it, why are you behaving like that? But understanding that this is someone that is trying their best, but they're under attack. And then I can say, hey, I know who you really are. I know that you're trying your best, but you're under attack right now, and this is how you can get over it. These are the things that I did. I want to talk about, before I leave the spiritual attacks thing, I want to talk about methods in which to cope with these attacks that you're being sent. So the first thing that I'm going to say is forgiveness is everything. And forgiveness, again, like everything else, is not something that you're going to rush. You trying to rush forgiving anyone is going to be like you're going to bang your head against a wall. It happens when it happens. Forgiveness comes from a place of understanding. And if you don't yet have the understanding, the most you can do is release it, but you're not going to forgive it. Forgive it says, I understand why you did this, and that why you did this is outside of me personally, that this is not personal. Once you understand that, you understand the why, then you can start forgiving. Prior to that, you are wasting your time. But forgiveness is everything. When you get to that place of forgiveness, it is an evolution for you. Forgiveness is where your cycle closes. And forgiveness is finally where you get your relief and you release it. Let me tell you something. You may not necessarily like the people that you have to forgive. And the people that you have to forgive definitely feel the same way about you and haven't stopped and haven't quit at all. I remember either the day of or the morning after I made my video saying like, look, let's put down our swords, I'm done. They sent me death spells right after that. There is no forgiving on that end. Just because you forgive people doesn't mean people are gonna agree, it's gonna be their time, or excuse me, it's even on their course. And you have to learn that. Otherwise, you are going to bang your head against a wall because it's not gonna work. Crying is a release. You cannot hold in pent-up animosity and pent-up anger, and that goes for male or female, because sometimes guys want to hold it in. You have to release. You gotta release. You gotta let it go. It's like washing the car. It's like rain falling. It's a release. Otherwise, it's pent up. You gotta cry it out. You gotta talk it out with God. You gotta go through it. And I'm not saying you want to complain and you want to bicker and you want to murmur and whatever, but sometimes that happens. But where you want to take it is to the spirit, and you want to talk to God about it. And you want to say to God, like I heard today in something I was listening to, try to stop the complaining and whatever. But as much as you might want to go scale over that behavior and not make it like a habit, sometimes it's just you got to take it to God, and you got to say to God, look, I am trying my best, but I'm failing with this thing. What can I do? I'm having a difficult time. And if you don't take it to God, there is no release. And when you say all of these things to God, then God is able to give you the answers that you need, give you the assistance that you need. So now you start saying to God, please be my patience. Please be my strength. Please be the forgiveness for me. And once you ask God for assistance with these things, God comes through with the assistance, and then all of a sudden now you see things happening for you. Then all of a sudden now you get explanations, you see things happen where it just opens your mind, and you're like, oh, and the understanding comes. And so whatever it is that you need, in asking for it, God comes through with that. And then you can sit back and say, oh my goodness, this was what I needed in order to walk through this. Please do not be afraid to ask for this help. As far as coping with rage and anger. So here are the things, and not just coping with rage, anger. It could also be spiritual attacks. It could be with being provoked. It could be with energies coming in and out of your home. It could be with being followed. It could be with, I don't know if I said anxiety attacks, I'm going to say it again, anxiety attacks, whatever it is. First things first, prayer. Prayer, my number one, prayer. Prayer will take you through everything. Prayer is the master key. You're being spiritually attacked, you start if you cannot pray yourself where it's self-directed, play the prayer. Play it on a device around you. It puts you in the right mind frame. Listen to preachings, listen to spiritual messages, listen to things that are putting your mind in a spiritual place. If you got to listen to preachings on your way to work, then that's what you want to listen to. It works better than listening to high vibrational music. It works better than all of these things combined. Prayer. And let me tell you one thing about demonic entities in your space. You have prayer going, whether it's while you're sleeping or in your waking hours. No entity wants to be around listening to that. It's repulsive. If you go into a space where there's a whole bunch of satanic people praying, you are not going to feel comfortable in that space. You're not going to want to be there. It is the same. You do not want to be in a space, or these energies do not want to be in a space where there's prayer, where there is upliftment, where there is especially strong prayer. So one thing I want to recommend for everybody, please make sure that you have a couple spiritual warriors that you listen to multiple times, maybe for a day, for a week, whatever your practice is, however much you can do it. Please have those prayer warriors, so that when you get these attacks, you can throw it on right away and curse those spirits. Not curse them, but banish them out of your life. You need your prayer. So sometimes it's like you can clean with sage and you can protect your home and you can do all of that. But you know what? I love prayer. When it comes to prayer, it's gonna be the master key that unlocks everything, because what it does is it strengthens the spirits that are in your home. The prayer doesn't just put you in the correct mind state. It puts you in the correct mind state, and it puts love in your heart for spirit. It invites spirit in a stronger way. It strengthens the strength of what you need, not focusing on what you don't need. So prayer is number one. Music is number two, because music is a vibration. It puts you in a particular vibration. And number three is talking yourself down, breathing in, breathing out, meditating, that sort of thing. So I would put meditation as number four. And number five is resetting your mind, forgiving yourself for the fact that it did work, forgiving yourself for the fact that you did allow yourself to be provoked, and putting yourself back in a reset and saying, we're going to start again fresh today. So these are habits that you put in place when behaviors come to you that you do not want to deal with. You have to go on a fool's journey to rebirth yourself. You got to go on the journey as the fool. You got to have some optimism, and this thing requires work, patience, because you're not going to judge yourself on how long it takes, and reworking it constantly. It's going to take discipline. This is how you untrap yourself and you put a death to the old you. When I read about the sun god Ra, it said that Ra married his mother, or in order to give birth to himself here on earth, to recreate himself on earth. And I read it and I said, this makes sense. This just makes sense. Because I wasn't looking at it as like how human beings look at a son and a mother and that sort of thing. Think about the fact that a seed comes from a tree, a seed drops from a tree, and you can look at the tree as the mother, and let's say the seed as the son. And when the seed drops from the tree, it's the mother has given birth. And when it falls into the ground, or to the ground, it's beaten up by all kinds of things. And I've talked about this before. So it's been the rain and the elements beating it down into the ground. It's been, blistering sun. It's other animals trampling it. It's all kinds of things. But what happens is that tree gets planted, not through a process that is very fun or very comfortable. And that seed takes root, and then it sprouts. And it's basically like the mother energy is or becomes, the energy of, you could call it the son or the daughter or whatever it is. And it's like, this is the cycle of life. And it's almost like this is how you give birth to yourself. And this is literally how technically we are all one. We are all the same. There's maybe a division between the seed looking at itself differently from the tree, but it's the same thing. It boils down to the same thing. So not only do you find yourself in a situation where, for me, and this is what I talk about, where you have a mother, so you have a mother energy that you're with, but you also are your mother by embodying those traits, by living this certain way, by having this lifestyle. And it's through this transformation of walking this path that you end these old cycles that you used to be in. It's through this transformation that you get yourself to the point where you've birthed that new version of yourself. It's through that place of allowing. You can't fight the fact that the rain's gonna fall. You can't fight the fact that animals are gonna trample this ground. You can't fight the fact that, as a little seedling, a little like that's sprouting out, perhaps like an animal comes and it tramples you, and it takes a while for you to get back up, to get stronger. But as the rain keeps falling, the same rain that's beating down on you and the same sun that's scorching you, you're deriving nutrients from the soil and all of that. That is how you get to re-strengthen yourself, strengthen your trunk, and over time, and it takes a long time for a tree to grow, but over time you get to the point where you strengthen yourself and you rise above it, and you become that tree. You don't become that tree through lack of persecution, lack of trials, lack of worries, but you adapt to the process more, and you accept the process as it is. The last thing I'm going to talk about before I'm done, you need to have a daily reset. And you can look at the reset just in the same way as the sun sets and then rises again in the morning. It's a renewal of energy. It's a renewal of energy. So every day you have to reflect, self-assess, self-analyze, and you have to breathe in new life into yourself. Breathe into yourself new life force after being depleted. And you can do this by making new commitments to yourself, making new promises to yourself, asking yourself, what is good for me that is also in service of whatever I'm doing. And sometimes the things that are in service of you are not necessarily straightforward. Sometimes through being sent health magic or spell work is how you decide, oh my goodness, my health is important. Let me take care of myself. Let me feed myself properly. Let me work out. Let me whatever. Sometimes it is in being beat down upon and certain things happening to you that you realize the importance of doing other things. So you have to give yourself, first of all, some grace and some patience, because you're not in an easy cycle. Death and rebirth on this level is not easy, especially going through a destiny swap. But you have to give yourself a new commitment every day. Days you need it. There are some days you really need it. You really need to give that new commitment. And then there's some days where it's not that serious. It's not that big of a deal. You're feeling good, you're feeling energized, but you give it anyway. So you come to a point where you continue to recommit yourself, whether you need it or not. It becomes your habit. So that commitment, remains top of your chest and top of your mind. That you're constantly recommitting yourself to something outside of yourself, something that is bigger than yourself every day. And you're constantly being reminded, like, why am I taking this walk? What am I in service of? And if you're having a rebirth where you're walking with the divine, then you will understand that every day, and I call it the crown, every day you're of service to the crown, and you recommit yourself that way. And that may just be something that you just put into practice. Maybe it's in the beginning of every prayer, it's in the end of every prayer, but you put it somewhere in a prayer. This is my advice on how you put yourself in a new beginning, from a destiny swap, from being gang stalked, from a major life event that makes you feel like you're falling apart. This is how you get it done. It's not just about tearing down the old, but it's also about at some point letting it go and pivoting the way that not consuming the same information all the time, not letting yourself, because by consuming the same information, by talking about it over and over, that by getting upset about it over and over, you're leaving yourself in the same place. But you have to find a new way of living. You have to put something new in, new practices that you adhere to, build the new so that you can abandon the old, so that the old disappears and vanishes behind you. So let me see, just make sure I made all my points. Yes, I did. This is the message that I have for today. Let me get a spirit messages. Oh my God. And this is literally the card at the bottom of the deck. I don't know if you guys can read it. It says, let go of the old and make way for the new. You may find yourself being distracted by random thoughts, fears, and doubts. Don't allow yourself to be governed by them. Simply observe and choose to take aligned actions and choices. I'm going to read it in a different way. Let go of the old and make way for the new. You may find yourself being distracted by random attacks, provocation, being gang stalked, being tired, being upset, and maybe old patterns of thinking and old habits. Don't allow yourself to be governed by them. Simply observe and choose to take aligned actions and choices. This is a practice that you need to continue to institute. It is not a one-day thing. You do not go to the gym one time and get in shape. You do not eat healthy one time and get in shape. It is a practice that you need to continue to move forward with, especially when the attacks continue to come. The entire time that I have been gang stalked, the gang stalking has not, it's tapered down, it's changed. There's different ways that they do it now than in the beginning, on and on and on. However, the gang stalking, regardless of what way it takes shape, doesn't have the same effect, because I've changed, I've learned, and I've grown, and it's taken a long time to grow. The adaptation is not necessarily to the new way that things are being done. The adaptation is basically me saying, I'm adapting to the fact that this is happening. I'm adapting to the fact that this has happened. I'm letting go of the fact that it's happened. So the physical act of being followed, while it's impossible to notice because of the way that it is, it's not frightening anymore. It's not, oh my goodness, like it just is what it is. It just is what it is. And adapting to it doesn't mean that you enjoy it. It doesn't mean that it is not something that you don't want to let go of, but it's just not something that you assign the kind of control that it used to have in your life. I'm going to read this crystal of the day. The crystal of the day is red jasper, and this is a crystal of stamina and endurance. Everything that I have talked about is about enduring something that has to be endured. Recommitting, learning how to adapt, learning how to transform as a result of pressure that is going to be continued. All of this takes stamina and endurance, because this battle has to wage for as long as it has to wage, and you cannot be sitting here dependent on what days it's going to end. You got to be able to do everything that you're supposed to do regardless of the fact that it exists. So red jasper is the crystal for stamina and endurance. It's a vitality boost, and the vibration is earthy. Red jasper is a powerful and energetic stone. It is the go-to crystal whenever you need extra energy or stamina, imparting determination to all pursuits and support during necessary conflict. Necessary conflict. Because you're in a conflicting situation that is necessary. And I've learned that. Known as the stone of perpetual protection in ancient times, red jasper is an extremely stable stone, grounding all areas of life. It is a reliable support during prolonged illness or traumatic events, sustains and supports during periods of stress, and prevents burnout. Sustains and supports during periods of stress and prevents burnout. This stone of health strengthens and detoxifies the circulatory system, the blood, and the liver. It is helpful for prolonged convalescence, speeding up recovery time. Traditionally, red jasper increases fertility and overcomes impotence at any level. In the mind, it encourages assertiveness, enhances organizational skills, promotes self-honesty, and boosts creativity. And in the spirit, it assists dream recall and out-of-body journeying. So if you don't feel like you need a red jasper right here. So this is my message for today. Thank you very much. Have a great day, and just remember that God loves you.